Chapter 10 The Barbary Coast. Poor Placidemavia, raw, naked, continually called on Our Lady, the Mother of God, imploring her to bring her some good person who would help her. She continued to walk. She continued to walk nearly half a league until she came upon some fishing boats. She went into a hut and found 2 sheepskins, and she tied them together with a thin string and put them on, one in front and one in back, and in this way she found some protection from the cold. Then she lay down to sleep a little while, for she was completely fatigued by her travails in the ocean. When she awoke, finding herself alone, she began to weep and lament, tears streaming from her eyes, which did harm her eyes and her voice, making her so hoarse she could barely speak. Then, with timorous steps, she began to search out the roads of cruel fortune. Dawn began to break, and she heard a Moor coming along, singing. She hid near the road, so that he would not see her, and when he had passed, she saw his pure white beard, and thought that perhaps this old Moor would give her counsel. So she approached the old Moor, and told him all about her misfortune. The Moor was moved to compassion when he saw the maiden, and who was young and nice looking, and he said to her, "Maiden, I want you to know that long ago I was a captive of Christians in Spain, in a place called Cadiz. The lady who held me captive was pleased with the services I performed for her. It happened that she had a son whose enemies had came to kill her. If it had not been for me, they would have done it, because I lifted my lady's son from the ground, and with a sword in my hand I wounded 2 of them, and made the others flee. Because of this, my lady gave me liberty. She provided me with new clothing, and gave me money for my journey, and as I wished, she had me taken to Granada. And because of the kindness of that lady showed me, you will have a place at my side. I have a daughter who is widowed, and she will take you in with all the tenderness of a sister." Placidemavia immediately knelt on the ground and gave him many thanks. The Moor removed his cloak and gave it to Placidemavia, and the 2 of them went near to a place called Tunis, called Rafal. When the Moor's daughter saw the maiden, so young and helpless, she felt great compassion. Her father begged her to be the best companion to her that she could, and he told her, "I want you to know, my daughter, that this girl is the daughter of that lady who gave me my freedom, and I want to repay my debt to this maiden." Because of the great love she had for him, his daughter took in the poor maiden with deep affection. She gave her a blouse and a Moorish garment with a headdress. Anyone seeing her would think she was Moorish. Let us return now to Trnt, who, shortly after Placidemavia was swept overboard with the 2 sailors in whose care Trnt had placed her, stayed with the sailor until the galley was completely filled with water and was going down. Then Trnt decided to jump into the sea with the sailor, and with the sailor's help he would be able to reach the shore. Nevertheless, Trnt never thought he would be able to avoid death, because when the Moors learned that he was Trnt, the captain of the Greeks, who had done so much damage to the Turks, they would not leave him alive for all the treasure in the world. But with the aid of divine providence and the sailor, they made it to shore, for it was now night and completely dark. Crawling quietly on their hands and knees, they drew away from the sounds of the Moors. When they had gone some distance, they no longer heard any people, and they went inland, away from the sea, and they came upon a vineyard that at that time was full of grapes. The sailor said, "My lord, for God's sake, let's stop here in this delicious vineyard, where we can take a look at the land, and tomorrow we can stay here all day long. Then tomorrow night we can go wherever your lordship commands, for I will not leave you in death or in life." Trnt gave in to his entreaties. When their stomachs were full of grapes, they saw a cave and went inside to sleep, naked as they were. When they awoke they felt very cold. They got up, and to get warm they carried rocks from one place to another. When the sun came out, Trnt's legs ached terribly. It happened then that the king of Tremencen was sending as his ambassador to the king of Tunis his best and most trusted knight. He was the captain general of all his land, and everyone called him the commander of the commanders. This ambassador had been there more than 3 months, and he and his men had been given lodging in a place that was lovely and abundant with animals to hunt. It so happened that that morning he went out for sport with falcons and greyhounds. While hunting, they pursued a hare which was very tired of running after being chased by dogs and falcons, and since it could find no other place to run, it went inside the cave where Trnt was. One of the hunters saw it go in, and he dismounted at the entrance to the cave and saw Trnt stretched out on the ground inside, with no desire to budge. The sailor helped him catch the hare. Then the hunter went directly to the captain and told him, "Sir, come with me. Inside a small cave there is a man whose body must be the most perfect nature has ever formed. But unless my eyes deceive me, he has been hurt badly, and he seems more dead than alive." The ambassador went toward the cave. When the sailor saw so many men coming, he left Trnt without saying a word, and fled very quietly, and the Moors did not see him. When the ambassador reached the cave, he stood looking at Trnt for a long while, and feeling pity for him, he said, "By our holy prophet Mohammed, who has plucked you from such grave danger and brought you into my hands, since nature has formed your body with such singularity, I am sure that he has given you many virtues. I have 3 sons, and you will be the 4th. He called his second son and told him, "Look on this man as your brother." Then he said to Trnt, "If you want to please me, tell me what brought you here. At the moment I am engaged in an undertaking for my eldest son. They are trying to take his betrothed from him, and I will not allow it, for she is a very virtuous maiden, and the daughter of the king of Tremancian. If Mohammed gives me success in this dangerous undertaking, do not worry about your loss, no matter how great it may be, for I will make you wealthy as soon as I return to my home." Trnt stood and replied, "Your lordship, I am a gentleman, although I am not a prince or lord. As a young man I went to seek my fortune in Levant. There I heard and believed the false and diabolical words of a widow. She had me enter an orchard at midday, and there she made me witness the most evil sight I would ever behold. I felt such unbearable suffering that with my own hands I took vengeance on the greatest enemy of my life. Then I boarded a ship and went to the Holy Land of Jerusalem to make amends for my sins. Sailing on a galley from there, you can see my misfortune. Saved by divine mercy from the stormy sea, I now beg your lordship's help." The ambassador said, "Take comfort. I have a great deal of land and am very wealthy. As soon as we get to my home, you will have everything you wish." His sons then took off his juba and gave it to him, and they had him sit behind the son on the horse, and they took him to their village, where he was dressed in the fine clothing of the Moorish style. When Trnt found himself dressed so finely, he had heard the kind words of the commander, he felt very comforted. They wanted to travel by night, and the sky was blue and the moon was full, and it lit up everything very clearly. So when the wind died down, they started off. But the first step Trnt took as he left the house, he fell flat on the ground, his arms outstretched. Then all the Moors said, "This is a very bad sign. Since this Christian has fallen with his arms out to the sides, his life will not last long." Trnt got up quickly, and hearing what the Moors were saying, he said, "Your interpretation of this is wrong. I am called Blnc, or white, and the moon is clear, white, and beautiful at this moment when I fell, and the moon was straight over my head and arms, and it was pointing to the road that I have to take while my hands were open and stretched out to the moon. And this shows that I, with divine power, must conquer all of Barbary." And then all the Moors burst out laughing, and they took it as a joke, and proceeded on their way, and finally they came to a castle. Now, the ambassador's son, the one betrothed to the king of Tremancian's daughter, was away. Hearing that his father had sent him a very good Christian prisoner, he ordered them to put Trnt in chains. After 2 months, the ambassador received the reply from the king of Tunis, and returned to the king of Tremancian, whom he found disconsolate. It happened that King Escarianto's land was on the border of the kingdom of Tremancian, and he wanted the king of Tremancian to give him his daughter as a wife, along with all his wealth, and after his death he wanted his kingdom. King Escariano was a very strong figure. He was completely black and a giant compared to other men. A very powerful king, he had many men and a great deal of wealth. King Tremondson was weak in spirit, and he had sent word to King Escariano that his daughter was already betrothed to the son of his head commander. Furthermore, she was with child, and he felt that he would not want to raise another man's child in his house. However, if he was doing this only for his treasure, he was prepared to divide that with him that if he would leave him and his sons in peace. Finally, they could not come to an agreement, and King Escariano had marched against him with all his forces, 55,000 strong, on horseback and on foot. Now this king of Tremondson had only about 20,000 warriors. Knowing that the other king was near and was coming still closer, he took up position in the mountains and waited for him. King Escariano came to the river, and as they forded it, he lost many men. But once across, they went up the mountains and found the king of Tremondson at the highest part, and they besieged him in a beautiful valley. In this valley were 3 castles with large villas and very strong fortresses. This is where the king of Tremondson lived with his wife and sons.